So I'm talking about though product metrics. So let's talk about a little bit of it, like
Yes.
because I think our audience can be mixed. They can be PMs, but other people also.
Yeah.
So let's just touch a little bit about like what is
Yeah.
a product metrics is, what should you measure for a success of a product.
So basically, like I think if you have a culture,
Right.
where you're iterating a lot and you're trying out a lot of the ideas, so in that culture, to really thrive into that culture, it is very important that you're also measuring it very quickly. So there
Right.
should be very quick feedback loop as well. You can't build something very fast and you're getting feedback like 2 months later.
Right.
And your users getting a bad experience for 2 months, which is completely unacceptable. So for that purpose, the product metrics are very important. You identify, like what are the key metrics in terms of like what are the key measurements, which can be something like activity of users or key flows, like how the users like behave, like how they enter into a key funnel. Let's for example, like they sign up, how many people they drop off post sign up, so that's a key funnel out there. How many active users you have, or net promoter score, we'll probably talk about that in detail. So these metrics tell you like whether you are doing an experiment, it is working nicely or it is not.
Okay,
Sure.
sure.
And they tell you very quickly. For example, like you release something, in 4 days you get to know through data, through plotted graphs, like okay, we release something and this is how the activity of users looks like. They're engaging positively or they're engaging negatively, and that way your team can again align to make quick iterations on the top of it.
That brings us second question, because team has many people, right? So when you make these product metrics, I know there are a lot of very obvious questions for us,
Yeah.
but a lot of people are still struggling to figure out like what should be the product metrics and who
Yes.
should own it.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about if a company decides to have a product metrics like this,
Yes.
or depending on the kind of product they're making. So what should be the cycle on which they should measure it, and who should own the product metric? Whose responsibility should be okay, I need to measure it, and what should be my cycle? So can you talk about that?
So I think first of all, it becomes very important like you come up with right product metrics, because those product metrics should be aligned with your company goals as well.
Right.
So for example, like you want your company to be successful, then you have to ask yourself like what can a product do to make your company successful.
Right.
What is the role which is a product is playing. So once you identify what role your product is playing, then how you measure that role, that becomes the next logical question.
Right.
And that should be not a very qualitative number, it should come up as a very quantitative numbers. Just to take an example like Airbnb, so number of nights booked per day became the high level product metrics.
But
If
number
they-
of users also, like how many, what is the number
Yes.
of users which are also using Airbnb?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's flurry of product metrics.
Yeah.
You have to identify 3 or 4 key product metrics,
Right,
like
yeah.
which are most logically connected to your company goals.
Company goals, right, yeah.
And then, if you have defined your high level key product metrics, those should drill down to individual product metrics, to individual features and individual critical flows. Just to give you an example, our high level product metric can be number of critical actions a user is taking on a daily basis on Townscript.
Right.
Now it can drill down to like onboarding metric. So there can be a product metric which is related to like how successfully we are onboarding users. So when we talk about successfully onboarding users, like how many people sign up and they end up a very engaged user selling tickets via Townscript.
Right.
So
yeah.
that's a very good onboarding metric. And this metric can be further drilled down to how many people end up we are losing them on sign up, then completing KYC, creating their first event.
Right,
It can
yeah.
drill down to individual sort of product metrics.
Yes.
Similarly, we can talk about retention. So okay, you can again talk about onboarding nicely, but if you're leaking users, if users are leaving after 6 months,
Right.
so you won't grow, right? So
Yeah.
then retention product metrics also become very, very important. So at a time you can give your goals, okay, like our company can at one time of the period, they can focus on onboarding more. 1 quarter they can focus on retention more. Then there can be metrics like net promoter scores, where you sort of measure like how much people are loving your product.
Yeah.
How much positive experience
Yes.
they're having after
So we'll
the
come
product.
back to NPS, because
Yeah.
a lot of people may not know about it
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
So before going there, so you mentioned a couple of points, right? Like for example, you're measuring like onboarding,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
example, and
yeah.
you realize, okay, in this funnel, you're dropping users at certain points, right?
Yes.
That can be measured.
Yes.
So that is a good thing by doing a quant, you know, by the
Yes,
numbers, what is
yes,
happening, what is
yes,
the percentage which
yes,
you are dropping at
yes,
onboarding, right?
yes.
So that kind of brings a question that, okay, now why people are dropping here?
Yes.
Right, so that's again a question that, okay, people know, okay, this is a drop which is happening, but why this drop is happening? Because
Yes.
often people don't think about, okay, now I know this drop is happening here,
Yes, yes.
but then how to fix the drop? So
Yeah.
can you tell like when this drop? I don't want to answer this question.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
why I'm asking
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So why this drop is happening and how what companies can do to identify, to basically understand why this is happening and
Yes,
what is
yes,
the procedure
yes,
for that?
yes.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one because product metrics will tell you what is working, what is not working,
Right.
but they won't give you answers why.
Yeah.
You know, data won't tell you that nicely. You know, so that's where usability studies come into the picture. Talking to the users come into the picture.
Yeah.
You know,
Investigating that section,
yes,
like with real
yeah,
people. Yeah.
with real people. And what happens, like how we approach it, like we go to the users back. If we figure it out, okay, like there's this whole onboarding process, and there's a drop.
Right.
So going back to the users, doing the testing with a fixed set of the users, observing them
Yeah. In the
in
environment.
in the environment where users are very comfortable,
Right.
observing them, and then looking at okay, coming with hypothesis like okay, these are the reasons they are dropping, and then coming up with the possible solutions.
Right.
And then again building some out there and testing it out, and again checking your metrics,
Metrics,
ki
yeah.
whether those hypotheses,
Worked or
the
not.
solution hypothesis worked or not.
Right.
You know, so there it becomes the iteration part.
Right.
But then studying the users in the natural environment will give you possible solutions.
Right.
Observing this.
So why I bring this point is the reason is a lot of companies thinks that they can understand this insight by
Yeah.
conducting surveys. Right?
Yeah.
So they think, okay, we just create a questionnaire
Yeah.
or a survey and then just roll out, and that's
Yeah.
just how we are collecting feedback.
Yes.
So yes, NPS is one part, right?
Yeah.
That is like a final thing, we're just getting like
Yes,
a score,
yes,
right?
yes.
But like this whole process of evolving and
Yeah.
like iterating a product through
Yeah.
these kind of studies. So so tell us about like why a survey is not the approach to kind of getting to know these answers, because a lot of companies just roll out surveys
Yeah.
for a customer satisfaction and they think that's what we should do, that's all. And we don't need to like conduct usability studies, or
Yes.
we don't have to interact with users. We
Yes.
are conducting surveys, and that's the way to go and get the feedback. So tell us like, why do you think like this approach is not the right approach, and conducting studies to know the why is the right approach?
So the problem with the survey is basically if you're gonna ask about a user, you know, if you ask a user about how he gonna interact with your product, you know, he won't be probably able to articulate it to you. You know, they won't be able to tell you, sort of a thing, very nicely. You can't. That information can't be a reliable information. The more reliable information is when you actually see them interacting with your product. You know, because we as a humans, probably if we ask you something, so we probably answer it in a way which we think. You know, but then the way we behave can be little different than how we sort of articulate it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so the right data as a something from a product perspective you will get once you see and observe your users while interacting with the product out there. That's a number one. Secondly, like surveys are sent out to emailers and everything. Like users, they don't have enough time. They are on the go. They probably check your emails. You know, they will fill a survey. Probably they are not engaged. You know, interesting thing with the usability is it happens in a very engaged environment. He's completely into the context. He's completely interacting with the product. It's outside all the real world notifications and everything.
yeah.
So in that sense, the feedback you get from them is very, very real and very, very important.
Sure.